Sometimes the best decisions feel like the worst ones in the moment. I'm 32 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I sent what I thought was the smartest text message of my entire life. Now, I'm sitting in my childhood bedroom, staring at faded posters on the walls, wondering how everything went sideways so incredibly fast. Let me back up and tell you how I became the villain in my own story. Derek and I had been married for 12 years, and I was suffocating. He was one of those guys who remembered every single anniversary, who did the dishes without being asked, who apologized first after every argument, even when he wasn't wrong. Most women would kill for that, right? Wrong. It was absolutely exhausting being married to someone so predictable, so safe, so boring. I met Ryan at this work conference 6 months ago. He was everything Derek wasn't. Spontaneous, exciting, dangerous in that good way that makes your heart race and your palms sweat. We started texting, then meeting for coffee, well, you know exactly how these things go. For the first time in years, I actually felt alive, like I could breathe again. The morning I sent the text, I felt like I was finally taking control of my life, like I was becoming the main character instead of a supporting role. I'd been planning it for weeks, slowly moving my important stuff to Ryan's place whenever Derek was at work, telling him I was organizing closets or donating clothes to charity. He believed every single word because that's the kind of trusting fool he was. I typed it out during my lunch break, my fingers shaking with adrenaline. I'm leaving you for someone who actually loves me. Don't try to stop me. Send. The relief was instant, overwhelming. No more pretending, no more fake smiles, no more boring conversations about quarterly reports and weekend plans to the grocery store. I was finally free. His response came 20 minutes later. Safe travels. That's it. 2 words. It pissed me off more than I expected, which I know sounds insane, but I'd given him 12 years, and he couldn't even be bothered to call and fight for me. I brushed it off, convinced myself he was probably in shock, processing. Chuckled darkly. Men like Derek don't handle rejection well, I told myself. He'd come crawling back within a week, guaranteed, begging me to reconsider. That night, Ryan and I celebrated at this fancy restaurant downtown, champagne flowing, candles flickering. I posted a subtle Instagram story. Champagne glass, candlelight, caption about new beginnings and finding yourself. The likes poured in from friends who had absolutely no idea what was really happening behind the scenes. It felt perfect, like the start of something amazing. But Derek still didn't call. Not that night, not the next day, not the day after that. Radio silence. By Friday, I was getting annoyed, then angry, then desperate. I decided to go back to the house and get more of my things, maybe force a conversation, make him acknowledge what was happening. When I pulled into the driveway, something felt different, off somehow. The spare key wasn't under the flower pot where we'd kept it for years. I used my regular key, but it wouldn't turn in the lock. He'd changed the locks on our house without even telling me, without any warning. My hands were shaking as I pounded on the door, my voice getting louder with each knock. Derek, I know you're in there. We need to talk about this like adults. Nothing. His car wasn't even in the driveway. I found the note tucked under the windshield wiper of my car, professional letterhead, some law firm I'd never heard of in my life. All communication regarding the dissolution of your marriage should be directed to Thompson and Associates. Thompson and Associates. He'd hired a lawyer already, within days of my text. I drove straight to Ryan's apartment, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't control. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This wasn't the script I'd written in my head. Derek was supposed to be heartbroken, not strategic and cold. He was supposed to beg me to reconsider, not lawyer up like some corporate shark protecting his assets. Babe, you look stressed, Ryan said when I burst through his door, video game controller in hand. He was playing on his couch, still in the same clothes from yesterday, energy drink cans scattered around. Derek changed the locks and hired a lawyer. Ryan paused his game, barely looking up. Damn, that's intense. Want a beer? That's when I noticed how small his apartment really was, how cramped and messy. One bedroom, barely any furniture, dishes piled high in the sink like a college dorm. For 6 months, it had felt cozy and romantic when we were sneaking around, meeting in secret. Now, it just felt cramped and depressing. I tried to use our credit card at lunch today. It was declined. Probably just a glitch in the system. No, Ryan, I called the bank. Derek moved all our money to his personal account. He finally looked up from his game, controller still in his hands. All of it? Every penny? The silence stretched between us like a chasm opening up. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, calculating what this meant for our future together, for his financial situation. Look, babe, maybe you should call him, try to work something out. This legal stuff is getting really complicated. Complicated? Like I was some problem he needed to solve instead of the woman he'd been telling he loved for months? The woman he'd convinced me to leave her husband? That weekend, I tried calling Derek directly, over and over, straight to voicemail every single time like he'd blocked my number. I drove past our house, my house too, legally, and saw him through the kitchen window making coffee like nothing had changed, like his world hadn't just imploded. When he spotted my car slowing down, he closed the blinds without hesitation. The mature thing would have been to respect his space and work through lawyers like adults, but maturity had never been my strong suit, never been something I prioritized. I waited until Monday when I knew he'd be at work, then showed up at his office building uninvited. The receptionist knew me, recognized me immediately. I'd been there for Christmas parties and company picnics for years, smiling and playing the supportive wife. "Oh, hi, Isla. Derek's in a meeting right now, but I can let him know you're here. Actually, I'll just wait by his office, surprise him when he's done." She looked uncomfortable, uncertain, but didn't stop me from walking past. I sat in the chair outside his door for 2 hours, watching his coworkers whisper and avoid eye contact, feeling their judgment. When Derek finally appeared, he wasn't alone. Some guy in an expensive suit I didn't recognize walking beside him. Isla. His voice was flat, professional, detached, like I was a client instead of his wife of 12 years. "We need to talk, Derek, please." "No, we don't. Everything goes through Thompson now. That's what lawyers are for." "I'm still your wife." "You're my soon-to-be ex-wife who announced she was leaving me for another man via text message. There's a difference." The guy in the suit cleared his throat awkwardly. "Derek, we should get going. The client's waiting downstairs." Derek nodded and started walking away. Actually walking away from me in public, in front of his colleagues who were watching. "You can't just shut me out like this," I called after him, my voice echoing. He turned around, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain, maybe anger, something human. But then it was gone, replaced by ice. "You shut yourself out the moment you sent that text, Isla. I'm just protecting what's left." That night, I got a call from Maya, my best friend since college. At least I thought she was my best friend. "Isla, what the hell is going on?" Derek's posting on Facebook about new chapters and being grateful for true friends. People are asking questions. Lots of questions. I left him for someone better, someone who actually sees me. "You left him? Jesus, Isla. How? Why? When did this happen?" "I wasn't happy, Maya. I haven't been happy for years, and I finally found someone who actually appreciates me." "Who? Who could possibly be worth throwing away your marriage?" Defensively, his name is Ryan. We met at that conference in March, the one in Chicago. Long pause on her end, the kind of silence that speaks volumes. "You've been cheating on Derek since March? For 6 months?" Sarcastically. I wouldn't call it cheating, Maya. I call it finding myself, discovering who I really am. Another pause. Even longer this time, suffocating. With judgment. Isla, Derek is one of the good ones. Everyone knows that. What you did, people aren't going to understand this. They're going to take sides. I looked around Ryan's apartment at that moment. He was in the bedroom talking loudly on the phone with someone about overdue rent. His voice stressed and angry. The sink was still full of dishes from 3 days ago, fruit flies hovering. Yes, I lied, trying to convince myself. He's worth everything, absolutely everything. But even as I said it, doubt was creeping in like poison, infecting every thought. The past week at Ryan's place had been different. The magic wearing off. The excitement of sneaking around was gone, replaced by the reality of actually living together day after day. He was messy, unemployed half the time, constantly stressed about money and bills. The passionate conversations we'd had during our affair had turned into him complaining endlessly about his ex-wife, his terrible job prospects, his landlord threatening eviction. Still, going back to Derek wasn't an option anymore. I'd burned that bridge with napalm and watched it collapse. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday, hand-delivered by some professional-looking woman who made me sign for them like they were a package from Amazon, routine and impersonal. Reading through the legal jargon, one thing became crystal clear. I was absolutely screwed. The house was solely in Derek's name, so was the mortgage. When we bought it 8 years ago, his credit was perfect and mine was less than perfect, damaged from college mistakes. The bank had required only his signature on everything, all the documents. At the time, I'd been relieved not to deal with the paperwork and responsibility. Now I was paying for that laziness with everything I had. The cars, the furniture, even the damn wedding china his mother had given us. Technically his since he'd made all the payments, kept all the receipts. My lawyer, some bargain basement guy I'd found online with terrible reviews, was brutally honest during our consultation. Mrs. Patterson, I'll be frank with you. Your text messages and social media posts make this case nearly impossible to win in court. You voluntarily abandoned the marriage for another man and documented it publicly for everyone to see. In this state, that affects asset division significantly, drastically even. But I was his wife for 12 years. That has to count for something, right? It does. You're entitled to your personal belongings and half of any assets acquired during the marriage that you can prove you contributed to financially with documentation. How much are we talking about? He did some quick math on his calculator, keys clicking. Roughly $3,000 and your Honda Civic. $3,000. 12 years of marriage reduced to what some people spend on a vacation, on a shopping spree. That's when the panic really set in, clawing at my chest. I'd quit my job 2 weeks before sending the text, thinking I'd have time to figure things out with Ryan, thinking love would be enough. My bank account had maybe $800 in it, barely enough for a security deposit. Ryan's financial situation was worse than I'd realized, worse than he'd admitted. He was 3 months behind in rent, and his credit cards were maxed out completely. Babe, he said that night, avoiding eye contact, maybe you should try to work something out with Derek, negotiate or something. This divorce stuff is getting expensive, and I'm not sure I can handle the stress right now, the pressure. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying maybe we rushed into this, moved too fast. Maybe you should have talked to him first, tried counseling or something before blowing everything up. I stared at him, really looked at him for the first time. This was the man I'd thrown away my entire life for. The man who'd whispered that he loved me more than Derek ever could, promised me the world. Now he was suggesting I crawl back to my husband like a dog with its tail between its legs. You're having second thoughts about us. I'm being realistic, practical. You're about to lose everything and I can't support both of us on my income. You have to understand that. What income? You've been unemployed for 2 months, Ryan. His face hardened, jaw clenching. Don't start with that. You knew my situation when we got together. I was honest. I knew you were between jobs, not that you were a professional mooch living off credit cards. The fight that followed was ugly, vicious, saying things that could never be unsaid. He called me a selfish person who destroyed her own life and expected him to fix it, to save her. I called him a loser who couldn't keep a job or pay his rent, who was using me. We both said things that couldn't be taken back, words that cut deep. I ended up sleeping on his couch that night, staring at the ceiling and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast in just weeks. The next morning, Ryan was gone, just gone without a trace. His clothes, his gaming console, even his toothbrush. The only thing he left was a note on the kitchen counter, his handwriting rushed. This isn't working out. I need space to think. Don't contact me. Space to think? The coward couldn't even break up with me properly, face to face like an adult. I was alone in his apartment, well, technically the landlord's apartment since Ryan was being evicted anyway. With nowhere to go and no money to get there, I called my mother, swallowing what was left of my pride. 2 years later, I was still living with my parents, still working retail for minimum wage, still scrolling through social media posts of the life I'd thrown away like garbage. Derek and his new wife had bought a house together. Not the house we'd shared, but a new one they'd chosen together, built memories in. They traveled to places I'd always wanted to go, posted photos of dinner parties with friends, looking like adults who had their lives together. I, on the other hand, was 34 years old and asking my mother for gas money for help with basic expenses. The final blow came when I saw the pregnancy announcement on my feed. Unavoidable. Derek's wife, glowing and beautiful with his hands on her growing belly protectively. The caption read, "Our greatest adventure begins in October." I'd wanted children with Derek once, early in our marriage when things were still good, but I'd kept putting it off, waiting for the right time, waiting to feel more settled, waiting for something I couldn't even name or define. Now he was having that family with someone else, someone who'd appreciated what she had instead of constantly wanting more, chasing excitement. I closed the laptop and stared at my reflection in the black screen. Tired eyes, stress lines I hadn't had 2 years ago, the look of someone who'd made all the wrong choices and was just now understanding the consequences fully. The worst part wasn't losing Derek, though that hurt more than I'd admit. I'd never really had him, not in the way that mattered, not in the way that counted. The worst part was realizing that I'd destroyed a good thing, something real and stable, because I'd been too selfish and immature to recognize its value until it was gone forever. I'd wanted excitement and passion and spontaneity, the romance novel version of love. What I'd gotten was chaos, drama, and regret that consumed everything. Derek had been right to protect himself, right to move on quickly, right to find someone who would love him properly, the way he deserved. I just wish I'd figured out how to be that person before it was too late, before I destroyed everything. But sitting in my childhood bedroom at 34, watching the man I'd thrown away build a beautiful life with someone else, watching them create the future I'd rejected, I finally understood the difference between wanting someone and actually loving them. I'd wanted Derek for what he could give me, security, stability, status. She loved him for who he was, kind, patient, loyal, good. And that, more than any divorce decree or custody arrangement or legal document, was why I'd lost absolutely everything and she'd gained the entire world I once had.